Before this video gets underway, this is the first Toronto Maple Leafs related video we have made since the passing of Rodion Amirov, an absolutely spectacular hockey player, but even more of an amazing person. He was a Toronto Maple Leafs prospect who had recently lost his battle with a brain tumor and unfortunately left us a few days ago, so condolences to Amirov's friends and family. This is a time for mourning for Toronto Maple Leafs and hockey fans in general. Sometimes life is unfair. With that in mind, though, let's proceed onto today's video. Call the Toronto Maple Leafs Neo, because they might have just dodged a bullet. Let's talk today about Erik Karlsson, Pittsburgh Penguins defender and recent San Jose Sharks tradee, who was acquired by Kyle Dubas in a pretty blockbuster three-team trade. Now, we already talked about the trade and its details. We broke down who I thought won the trade. Honest to goodness, I think that all teams involved, Montreal, San Jose, and Pittsburgh, had a hand in the dub category with this one. But when it comes to the Kyle Dubas comments that he had made regarding the Carlsson acquisition afterwards, I wanted to bring your attention to this article on the Hockey News from right after everything was done. This was from about a week ago. Kyle Dubas reveals that his pursuit of Erik Karlsson began as the GM of the Toronto Maple Leafs. The Penguins president and GM revealed he was after the three-time Norris winner before leaving Toronto. This is a pretty intriguing idea, especially when you go over the comments that Dubas made verbatim. Here's the comment, and also the link is going to be in the description if you want to read this article in full. It's a pretty good piece written out here by David Alter. But Kyle Dubas said this: "It was a fairly lengthy process that goes back to my previous employment," Dubas admitted. Even though he is in his early 30s, Erik Karlsson continues to be one of the top skaters in the NHL, and obviously his offense is quite prolific. The article also says at the bottom here that in an interview with Swedish news outlet Expressen last month, the 33-year-old Carlsson revealed that the Penguins, the Maple Leafs, and the Hurricanes were among the teams interested in his services. And with this entire idea in mind, the fact that Kyle Dubas was going after Erik Karlsson as the Maple Leafs GM, what I wanted to ask y'all was whether or not the Maple Leafs dodged a bullet, because this entire idea of the Maple Leafs going after a top offensive defenseman is not a new one. We've been seeing the entire search for a guy to man that power play, be a secondary offensive option behind Morgan Rielly, and hopefully find more ways to create offense from the blue line. This was a thing that you saw the Maple Leafs try to address with Erik Gustafsson. I get it, you could say that was more so a trade of Rasmus Sandin than it was an acquisition of Gustafsson. Gustafsson just happened to be a power play quarterback on the move to Toronto. And you saw this also addressed by the Maple Leafs in their offseason acquisition of John Klingberg. That is an offensive defenseman through and through who had signed a cheap deal with the Toronto Maple Leafs at, what's the dollar amount there? $4.15 million a year till the end of the year. It's a one-year deal. So Klingberg is heading over to Toronto as a guy that will hopefully be a top power play unit offensive defenseman quarterback. Even if he isn't on the top unit, still, there's some offense to be gained there. But Klingberg addresses that individual need. Had Kyle Dubas still stuck around in Toronto, and had Kyle Dubas gotten the move done that he wanted to get done, maybe, if Dubas was still the Maple Leafs GM, Erik Karlsson would be a Leaf by now. But of course, when it comes to the idea of getting big, talented players, you also have to acknowledge their big money contracts. And for Carlsson, the guy is not making a small dollar amount, $10 million a year on the Penguins cap till the end of 2027, because there was salary retained by the Sharks. Now, even if you go out there and assume, okay, salary retained, Dubas gets the contract at what he wants, $10 million is still $10 million freaking dollars. Had the Toronto Maple Leafs gotten this done, sure, they would have gotten the best, or not the best, I'm sorry, I just forgot Adam Fox and Cale Makar both exist, one of the best offensive right-handed defensemen in the entire NHL on their team, along with Tavares, Marner, Matthews, Nylander, hopefully Nylander, and the like, right? We get how good of a lineup this could be on the ice, right? But that dollar amount is so detrimental that for Toronto, if you were to try to project everything you had to go through, you needed the extensions handed out to Nylander, to Matthews, to everybody else. If you get Erik Karlsson, who knows what you're going to be able to accomplish, whether or not you're going to get any of these guys back on a reasonable deal, because Carlsson would be taking so much money on that cap that it could potentially doom whatever else Dubas or Treliving would want to do when it comes to re-signing guys. I get it, you could say, alright, well, if you try to distribute the money properly, maybe if you don't sign John Klingberg and you don't sign, I don't know, Tyler Bertuzzi or something, you can get this Carlsson trade done. The money freed up is applicable that you're able to get Carlsson on your books, and if you give Matthew Knies a bigger role, maybe he plays up to his status as a top prospect and he's one of the better contracts because he's only on his ELC. Maybe it works out like that, who really knows? But of course, you can't go out there and immediately expect guys who are prospects to become top-line NHL contributors right away. No disrespect to Matt Knies, it's a tall task being a first-liner in the NHL. I'm sure you can understand that. And so for Erik Karlsson, I have been seeing some comments pop up about this idea of the Leafs trying to go after him, how Dubas revealed that this was the plan. The article that we talked about was posted onto the Leafs sub, and this is some of the comments on that thread. Iho says this: former years at 11.5 or even 10, which the Penguins got, could have presented serious issues for this team. We're already having issues with building depth and salaries with the core 4. Imagine if that became the core 5. Add to that Erik Karlsson's history. Last year was incredible, sure, but he wasn't particularly special offensively for 5 seasons before that. He's always been a bit of a defensive liability and missed more than 26 games in all but one of those years. If the Maple Leafs acquired him, best case Ontario is that he continues putting up 100-plus point seasons and keeps playing 82 games until he's 37, which is pretty darn unlikely. But nonetheless, this represents another massive double-digit salary on the books. Worst case scenario, we have an anchor of a contract in the books for an aging defender who can't stay on the ice that limits our ability to add depth pieces throughout the remainder of Austin, Mitch, and Willie's primes. I'm pretty happy that Dubas didn't make the deal while he was there. Another comment says, this was a potential disaster with acquiring Erik Karlsson. It's enough for me to also be happy the Leafs didn't make that move. If he regresses to how he was playing prior to last season again, it would potentially be the type of anchor contract that completely closes the contention window on the existing core. And you have to remember for Erik Karlsson, before last season where he had 102 points, he had 35 points in 50 games. Now, the points per game number is honestly not terrible, but of course, the sample size, the availability of this guy in the lineup, that was a negative. And it was so negative to the point that a year ago in 2022, we were having conversations saying, hey, is there any team that's going to get Erik Karlsson? Does anybody want this guy? The Sharks traded away Brent Burns in this time frame, and everybody was saying, okay, yeah, Burns is gone. This was a good rebuilding type move for the Sharks, but can they trade Carlsson? Is that a possibility? And then he had a 100-point season, and the Sharks kind of played chicken a little bit on the trade market for Carlsson and ended up getting a smaller return, but they still traded him away, so there you go. Erik Karlsson could easily regress back to what he was 2 years ago. He could regress to that, and maybe even a little bit worse because he is a tad older. Or he could stay at the 100-point caliber production pace play that we had seen the past year. Either or is a possibility. But the gamble is so big that for a lot of Toronto Maple Leafs fans, this is seen as a massive bullet dodged when you acknowledge how risky this move could have been. For Pittsburgh, it's okay, because if this move doesn't work out, hey, screw off Crosby and Malkin, y'all are retiring soon. Doesn't matter, you guys are going to be in a rebuild sometime in the future anyway. For Toronto, they cannot afford to screw up the primes of Matthews, Marner, Nylander, Tavares, everybody in here who is relatively young, who are going to need more extensions soon. For Crosby, Malkin, Letang, these guys are so old and they're not going to be sticking around for an extended amount of time afterwards that if you fumble the bag and Erik Karlsson isn't good, then it doesn't matter. You guys are not going to be wasting the prime years of Crosby and Malkin. That already happened. And guess what? Y'all already won 3 Stanley Cups, so it's fine. Just try to go out there in a last-ditch effort to do it again while you still have Crosby, Malkin, Letang, and of course Carlsson on your team. And if it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. It's fine either way. So if you're a Toronto Maple Leafs fan, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. How do you feel about the idea of the Leafs going after Erik Karlsson? How Kyle Dubas pretty much confirmed that this was the case. They were trying to do this. They were trying to get it done, but ultimately his work carried over to his next team. if it was Toronto instead of Pittsburgh who had acquired this player, if it's Erik Karlsson instead of John Klingberg, for example, what are your thoughts about that? How do you feel the Maple Leafs would perform? How well do you think Carlsson would play in this big market like Toronto? Of course, we know he was a part of Ottawa, so he knows what it's like being a part of a Canadian market, but not Toronto specifically. So let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Did the Maple Leafs dodge a bullet by not acquiring Erik Karlsson? Does the play and the potential outweigh the contract? I hope you enjoyed this video, and bye.